Supervisor with the Department of Corrections. Yolanda Gonzalez is an officer. Yolanda Gonzalez is a parole officer with the Department of Parole. We have three individuals that have agreed to come here today that are parolees. You guys can come forward and have a seat. Mr. Harrington is going to have a short presentation about parole in Colorado, and then we're going to open it up to the panel of the inmates to discuss their experiences. Between the three of them, they have over 50 years of incarceration between the three of them, and they're going to discuss that. You can ask questions if you wish, but they have served their time. They've paid their debt to society, and I expect you guys to be respectful of that. These guys have donated their time to be here. You know, it's not easy for them, but they have a story they want to tell you. So I will turn it over to Mr. Roger right now.
All right, so how many of you have done one of these with me before, or one of these in general? Anybody? Several of you, I know. Okay. So I started doing these with Mr. Martinez back in 2008 or 2009. And I want to tell you that it's only through the gracious cooperation and work that we do with our parolees that this panel is a success. As Mr. Radebach told you earlier, these people are all here on their own time. They're here volunteering their time to talk to you so that you can learn from them what corrections is really like. It's really easy to listen to me give a presentation and assume that's the way it is, but the reality is that I'm not always right, and their perspective is completely different because they lived in the system that I kind of worked as part of. So we thank them for that. Just so you know, this is the way it's going to work. I'm going to give my presentation. Then they're going to be allowed to give their presentations. They have not been coached or censored in any way. They can say anything they want to say. We encourage them to do that. At the end, we'll take questions, and you can ask any question you want as long as it's phrased politely. And at the end of the day, they have the right to say, I'd rather not answer that question. And if that's the case, we just move on. Okay? So there'll be lots of time to ask a lot of questions, and these guys have a lot to share with you. I can tell you I started in law enforcement in 1980 as a street cop, and then later I went to various places. I worked on the street, I worked in county jails, I worked here at corrections, and I can tell you that it's really, really simple for a law enforcement officer to shove somebody through the door into the criminal justice system. The question isn't, can you push them through the door, because we do that all the time. The question is, what do you do when they come out of the door on the other side? It's not just that simple. You can't just put them in and take them out and expect everything to be normal and like it was. So there's a real challenge to help these people transition back into the community after we've taken everything away from them. And they have to live inside, and they basically told what to do the whole time they were in there. So we're going to go over a little bit really quickly. I may skip some of these slides for the preservation time, but we're going to go through this, and Ms. Gonzalez is going to push my button for me, I guess. Which one to push? You're all set? Okay. So, parole is a small part of the Department of Corrections. Our vision statement is to build a safer Colorado for today and tomorrow. That was a phrase that was come up with by Mr. Tom Clemens, who was the director of DSD, who, as you may remember, was killed answering his door several years ago. Our mission statement: protect the citizens of Colorado by holding offenders accountable and engaging them in opportunities to make positive behavioral changes and become law-abiding, productive citizens. Now, again, it's real simple to push somebody through the door into the prison system. What do you do when you come back out? So our mission is not to do all that law enforcement stuff all the time. It is to help these people transition back out of prison and into the community again. Value statements. Our staff is our greatest resource. We support a professional, empowered workforce. We honor and respect the rights of victims. We respect the individual differences of our staff members and offender populations and seek to safeguard the safety, dignity, and well-being of all. And that's why I start off by saying thank you to these nice people for coming, and let's respect their space a little bit as they share with you today. We strive to deliver correctional services with optimal efficiency. So, we engage in effective correctional practices, at least we hope we do, The measure is not what I say, the measure is how do these people perceive what those services have done for them while they were here. We are committed to exceptional customer service. It sounds like a spiel that you would hear from a credit card company or a phone company. If you were to read later on in our documents that I'll be sharing with you here in a minute, you'll see that as a parole officer, my customer is considered to be the parolees that I supervise. We are dedicated to providing opportunities for offender success. Our success is achieved through mission-focused collaboration. We don't do this by ourselves. We work with a lot of agencies and a lot of outside resources to hopefully get to a point where these guys can succeed. The Department of Corrections is responsible for the management of the state's adult prison system. There is a youth prison system. Yes, children can go to prison. That is called the Department of Youth Corrections, DYC. There is also what's known as Youth Offender Services, YOS. The difference there is what was the crime and how was it adjudicated. The YOS system is for juveniles who were tried and convicted as adults, even though they're juveniles. They'll end up spending time in a special adult prison. DYC is for people who were convicted of crimes as youth that remain youth. We're responsible for management of the prison system, community corrections, that means all the halfway houses. You have at least 2 here in town. Intensive supervision program inmates, those are people who are technically still inmates in prison, but we've chosen to allow them out of prison to manage them on the street instead of facility and regular parole. Okay, currently we have 19 prisons across the state. That does not include the YOS system or the DYC system because that's different. And we have 4 private facilities. Those are prisons that are owned and operated by private companies because we need the bed space. And so we have private companies to build prisons, staff prisons, and house people for us to accommodate some of that bed space. Adult parole, that's what we do. We are responsible for offenders who transition from a facility to parole. So I'm going to stop there right here. You can read the slide. We have about 6,000 people working for DOC across the state. Does anybody know the difference between probation and parole? Anybody know the difference in those two? Anybody? What do you think it is?
Parole is for folks that actually have been in jail and good behavior or whatever else are now serving the rest of their time in the population. Probation is you've done something and instead of putting you in jail, we're giving you a second chance to not do that again.
Correct. The other way to look at that is that probation is a sentence. The judge sentences you to probation. I'm not going to send you to jail, I'm going to give you another chance. This is what you've got to do to succeed. Parole, you've been convicted of a crime, you've actually served time in an institution, and now you've been released. And parole is the required or mandatory period of supervision following that sentence. Okay, some of the things that our agency is working on. Again, we are taking a big focus on this right now. When I started 12 years ago, we didn't do business this way, but we are changing how we do things. We are establishing, these are strategic policy initiatives, things that we want to do to hopefully make the system better. Number 1, establish an offender mentoring program through in-reach services. Through this system, we're pairing up offenders in prison with people who can mentor them, help them transition from prison to the outside. Decrease the recidivism rate. Right now, it's somewhere around 52%, I think. We're trying to reduce that below 50%. Target number is like 44. That is to say, we're trying to reduce the number of people who are being returned to prison after they've been released. Increase the percentage of female offenders assessed with the WRNA. Here, as you go through, that doesn't mean much to you right now, but as you go through correctional processes, you see that we're really big on assessing people, trying to figure out what their risks are, what their needs are. We do what's called a risk needs assessment. We do a lot of assessment tools to determine where the offender is. One's called the LSI, which is level of supervision inventory. It gives us an idea of where that person is, what kind of needs they have, what kind of services they need to succeed. Decrease the percentage of employed parolees. We actually have a pilot program that's just starting where we're hoping to let people who are on the verge of imminent release where they can actually apply for a job while they're still in prison. And if need be, you do video interviews while they're still in prison so they can hopefully have a job waiting for them when they come out. And when we look at people's risks and needs, one of the biggest ones is to have a job, right? Because you got to pay your bills. Implement health care assistance program. So we have a lot of people in the Department of Corrections that have some kind of mental health issue, and we're trying to implement a program whereby we have other offenders that have the same needs or similar needs that will mentor them and help them out. We also now have parole and mental health clinicians in our parole offices that will help people, which will assess them in the office and determine if they need any needs, get them hooked up with an appropriate position if need. So, there's a couple of pieces to corrections. There's the prison system, Department of Corrections, there's the parole board, and then there's parole. So corrections is responsible for all prisons and maintaining people in facilities. Parole is responsible for supervising everybody else's layout. The parole board is an independent body that is working for us to work together who determines when somebody can be released according to statute, hopefully, and what their condition is. The board is made up of 7 people. They are all appointed by the governor, and they have to be confirmed by the state senate. So this is one of those other things you think about when you're voting. Who are you going to pick as governor? Remember that your governor gets to pick who sits on the parole board. And that has a direct effect on who gets released and how those operations are done. So when you're voting for governor, remember you're just not voting for him. You're voting for all the people that he's going to appoint. So those are some things to think about as a informed voter. It is a full-time job for those guys and ladies. Their primary job is to assess offenders who are in facilities and determine if and when they can be released. They will do hearings called release application hearings with each offender prior to their release from the facility that determines when they're going to go to parole, and they will set the conditions for their parole. Those are the rules that they have to live by while they're off parole. So they used to go up to the offices of the facilities and do all these interviews face-to-face. Now they're doing them over video conferencing, which is one of the technology things that they're doing. The board has to vote on each and every application. So imagine, if you will, 3,000 people that all want to be released from prison. The board has to, at least one member of the board has to meet with those people face-to-face, and then they have to decide whether or not to release them or not. In most cases, 2 board members can make that decision to release somebody. If you're convicted of a violent crime, you may be required to do what they call a full board review, and then 5 of the 7 board members have to vote for your release before you can have. Okay. So, these are the slides I'm going to kind of skim over because this is just going to be a word for you. But this is what we do. We have a number of programs that we supervise. Regular parole, parole intensive supervision program. Those are people that either have a violent conviction or high risk. We have to monitor them according to certain statutes or certain standards. We have community residential programs, which are our halfway houses. Those people are technically still inmates, but they're living in a halfway house. We have parole officers stationed in those facilities to work with them. Inmate intensive supervision, as I said earlier, these are people who are actually technically still inmates in prison, but they're living on the street with all of you. So we supervise them at a higher level. They are being given a chance to live on the street with all of you, and hopefully that will be successful, but they're not on parole yet. They're still considered inmates. We're giving them the opportunity to live in the community and get a head start on things before they actually parole. And interstate compact offenders. We have 70,000 people in this state right now who are supervised by parole who are not on parole in Colorado. What that means is they committed a crime in another state. For whatever reason, they ask to move to Colorado. That application goes through a process and it's approved. They're allowed to come to Colorado and serve their parole time here. We have parolees serving their time in other states. a vast area of laws and regulations that control all that. But we have a lot of people that do that. And while they're here, they're subject not only to our rules, but to the rules of the state that they came from. And if they have a violation, they can be sent back to wherever we came from. We also operate our community reentry program. We have people that specialize, and this is something we're getting better at, specialize in helping people come out of prison and get back to normal. The community reentry program offers a lot of services in terms of helping them find jobs, a place to live, behavioral interventions, those kinds of things. We can help them with clothing. We can help them for short periods of time with paying for their residences, those kinds of things. We can help with transportation. The reentry specialists will meet with these people before they come out of the facility, and then they will meet with them again after they come out of the facility. They'll meet with them face-to-face, and they can supply them with all kinds of things. In addition to that, we're currently working with the Work and Gain Education Employment Skills Program. That's grant money that we're getting right now. We actually have a person in our office whose title is Employment Navigator, and her job is to help parolees find work. Our community care case managers are people who help people in terms of health insurance. We help them apply for Medicaid or Medicare or whatever the case may be. Mental health people, she helps them get set up with assessments, their medication, those kinds of things. And we can actually work with the Workforce Center and some other places on getting people education and training to get a job. We have several programs right now that are actually paying for offenders to get their CDL if they want to be a professional driver. And there's some other schools that they go to learn how to do asbestos abatement and things like that to help get a steady, good job in the bank. As I said before, our customers are the parolees we work with every day. Stakeholders, people that have an interest in what we do. Board of Parole, we don't answer to them, they don't answer to us, but ultimately, by law, we're enforcing their rules. Parole officers just don't make stuff up. We enforce the rules that the parole board puts in place. We also work with churches and faith-based organizations. A lot of great work is being done by churches. You may hear some of that a little bit later with regard to helping people reintegrate. We've got a lot of agencies that are helping. We have a very active victim services unit that caters to the needs of victims. We don't have time to go into that today. And we have a lot of things that we do with regard to the general public and offenders' families. I'll just insert a little thing here, which is kind of goes off the chart sometimes, but my job as a parole officer is to make sure that big, bad, scary people don't hurt you, right? He's not big, bad, scary. He's not. I kind of like that. But I have an equal job, and that's to protect him from people who are big, bad, and scary. Because it's not uncommon for the public to harass parolees, especially people who have specific conditions such as sex offenders and gang members, to harass them because we don't want them in our neighborhood, we don't want them in our restaurant, we don't want them working here. So part of our job works both ways. It's to serve the public by protecting them, but we also have an equal obligation to protect the people that we supervise, because I hate to say it, but sometimes the public is a impediment to what we do in terms of getting people back where they should be. So our job is to supervise these people according to the conditions that are set by the parole board. The parole board, at the time that they have their release hearing, will look at their case and decide what it is they need, decide what rules they have to abide by, and then they will write a contract with that offender, which is called a parole agreement. It says, we're going to let you out of prison, but you've got to do these things, or you can't do these things, as the case may be. Our job is to make sure the offender understands all that, and to go over that, and to enforce that. We have a lot of different things that we're doing right now that we never used to do. When I started this job 12 years ago, I walked in, and on day 2, I found 35 files on my desk, and I said, good luck, knock yourself out. I had no idea what I was doing, and quite honestly, reintegration and rehabilitation was not something we focused on. We're getting better at that by implementing a lot of programs in the way we talk to people, the way we manage people, and hopefully we're starting to affect some serious change. So, some of the things that our officers are currently being trained on are techniques that you may learn in your college education. You may learn about motivational interviewing. You may learn about things called ethics, effective procedures and community supervision, behavior change, those kinds of things where we teach people about their cognitive skills. We teach them to think about the way they're thinking and change their thinking patterns, hopefully have a better outcome next time. We do a lot of things that are required. We meet with these people face-to-face in our offices. We go meet with them at their employment. We go meet with them at their house. We are required to have so many contacts per calendar period. We also make sure that they're in compliance with their treatment if they have any, and they may be subject to electronic monitoring, which is part of that intensive supervision program you heard about. That can be a curfew monitor, which just tells us when they're home and not. It's a device they wear on their ankle, or it could actually be a GPS system where it tells us where they are, not in real time, like on CSI, but we can tell pretty close. Okay, we've got a lot of things to do to manage our people and to help them succeed. We have a lot of resources at our disposal, but we need more. And that's where the public education piece of this comes in, because we can't do this by ourselves. We really need a lot of people to help us. It takes a village, as I used to say. So we're looking at churches, we're looking at faith-based institutions, and things like that. We're trying now to get this stuff going in the right direction before they ever come out of prison, which is why we talked about the work program. We now have parole officers assigned to prisons. They're working in prisons to help people understand what kinds of things they can expect when they come out, and they can understand what's going to be required of them and those kinds of things, so that hopefully that transition is not as bumpy. So our pre-release programs are teaching a lot of skills. We're teaching money management, we're teaching budgeting, we're teaching how to fill out a resume. We're teaching all kinds of things about how to get transportation, how to go to school, restorative justice kinds of topics. Working with them to understand the impact of what they did may have had on their victims. We're also working with them in terms of mental health. Do they have a mental health issue which caused them to be in this position? Or did they have a mental health condition that was caused by the event? It's very easy to understand post-traumatic stress. A soldier goes to war, he shoots a bunch of people, he has post-traumatic stress. Is it possible that a gang member gets in a gunfight, they shoot somebody, now they have post-traumatic stress? The answer is, yeah, that's possible. Why? Because the same kind of mechanics are going on in their brain, and they may need help with that as well. So we want to be sure that those kinds of things are being addressed. So this is a long list of things that we're working on right now. And what that means is that by the time they're coming out of the facility, we should have a plan in place for what they need and how we can help them succeed. Good. So, again, lots of things, lots of people working with this. Right now we have several faith-based organizations in town that are working with us on helping with getting people housing and getting people education. We have a couple of agencies that are working specifically with the needs of sex offenders. How many want a sex offender living right next door to them? The answer is, well, if you ask people that, they don't know. But the reality is they need a place to live too. And if we want them to succeed and go back to some sense of normalcy, we have to address that. One of the things that we as parole officers face in those special cases, and I was just supervising the sex offender unit a little while ago, if I asked a question, you don't have to answer this, but think about it. Stop in your brain and say, what is a sex offender? What answer do you get? What do you envision? What is a sex offender? Because I'll guarantee you that 9 out of 10 times, oh, he was raping somebody, he was raping babies, he was molesting children. You know, we have sex offenders that never touch anybody, right? We have sex offenders that are addicted to porn. They never touched anybody in their life, but they had some kind of child pornography or something like that where they have no hands on victims. They never hurt anybody in their life, but they committed a violation of the law, and now they're considered sex offenders. So when you go through corrections in the justice system, remember that definitions are important, and most people that aren't educated don't know what that means. So the proper answer is, what's a sex offender? And your response should be, I don't know, what did he do? Because you don't know. So there's things that we go through in this process where we have to understand what that offender did. So, does that mean that if he's a sex offender, he can't live next to a school? I don't know. What did he do? Did he just rape his girlfriend? I'm not saying that's okay. Don't misunderstand. But I am saying that maybe his victim pool wasn't children. So it doesn't matter if he lives next to a school. So those are things you've got to look at and consider when you're supervising somebody. And that's why you have to have a plan in place as they come out. All right. So we're going to, next slide. Let me switch this. Yep, successful. There you go. Okay. So, if you were to look at a parole agreement, which all of these people have, the parole board says, we're going to release you on conditions. Those conditions have to be complied with 100%. If not, then your parole may end. The parole board sets those conditions. We're going to go over some of them here. There are some conditions that are exactly the same for every parolee, and there are some that are specific to that parolee. So the parole agreement is issued, made by the parole board. It's issued to the offender prior to release, and they kind of look like this. Number one, parolee will be directed and supervised by community parole officers and supervisors of the Colorado Department of Parole. Okay, so understand that there are a lot of things that happen to you when you're convicted of a felony. There are things you can't do anymore. There are things you can't possess anymore. There are things that change in your life. We are just now getting to the point where, upon release, felons can vote again. In a lot of states, they can't. In Colorado, that's changing right now. They can vote again. Okay? So it says you will be accountable for your actions to your parole office. You will abide by all the conditions set forth in the parole agreement. Okay? Those conditions have to be specific. You have to understand what they are, and you have to be able to comply with them. Any violation can lead to the revocation of parole. Parole officers do not send people back to prison. We do not revoke people to prison. We file a complaint with the parole board, just like a police officer would write you a ticket, you go to court. The parole board, if they choose to, revokes you back to prison. So if you're on parole and your parole officer says, I'm going to revoke you, no, you're not. You can't. Parole board. Go ahead. Following conditions of parole. So there are several of these, and for the purpose of this presentation, I only put the ones that are common to everybody. Release. Upon release from the institution to go directly to the designated parole office. So that means when you get out of prison, you're going to go to the parole office. Your parole agreement at the top is going to tell you where you're supposed to go. Name, address, and phone number. Okay. Residence. Parolee shall establish a residence of record and shall reside in such residence as acting on record, shall remain at the residence of record each night unless otherwise approved by the parole officer. Shall not change his residence and so on. So, rule number one, you have to tell parole where you're living. And you have to actually live there. This is probably one of the biggest violations or the most prolific violation we have in terms of parole violations is they're not living where they said they were. There are a lot of reasons for that, but at the end of the day, that's the big one. And if we don't know where you are, then what else do we not know? Conduct. Parolee shall obey all state and federal laws and municipal ordinances, shall follow the directives of the parole officer at all times. We can't just make stuff up. I just can't say, I'm sorry, it's Tuesday, you have to dress like a clown. I can't say, you have to eat fish on Friday. That doesn't make sense, and it's not reasonable. But I can give them directives that make sense, such as, you will go home and stay there until I come by and see you. Okay? We can make little directives like that that have small impact on their behavior. Number 2, reporting. Parole should make written and in-person reports as directed to the parole officer and shall permit visits to his or her place of residence as required by the parole officer. It shall submit drug tests and so on. Now, 2 things. A year ago, your legislature passed a law that said we no longer mandatorily drug test everybody that's on parole. We used to. We don't do that anymore. So now, at the time of release, if the parole board puts it on there that they will participate in drug testing, they will. If not, we're not drug testing parolees. There's lots of complicated reasons for that. Those are not the scope of this class, but that's that. So it also says on there, it's required to pay for all tests. We just changed that not too long ago. When I started, parolees were paying for their drug testing, they're paying for their mandatory treatment, they're paying for all that. Right now we have programs that are paying for that, so they're not, except in some very small cases, they're not paying for that. But let me, we talked about residence, and now this says, permit visits to his or her place of residence. You say, well, what's the point of parole officers? Why don't we just have police officers doing that? Or what's special? In Colorado, the court has ruled that parolees are a high-risk population. As a result of that, the court has ruled that while you're on parole, you have to declare where you're living. Parole officers can come to where you're living, and they can search the whole place. And they don't need a warrant, because it's one of your parole conditions. So if you're a parolee and you declare your address, and the parole officer knocks on your door, he may just say, hi, how are you? Good to see you, glad you're here. Okay, see you later, bye. Or he may say, hi, how are you? Step inside, have a seat. And he and his friends can search your entire house and your personal belongings and your property and your cell phones and your computers. No warrant required because it's a condition of your parole. As a parolee, you're basically waiving or giving up your Fourth Amendment protection of search and seizure. The reason I say that is it only works for parole officers. So if you're on parole and a city officer knocks on your door or a county deputy or whoever, I'm here to search your house, you don't have to let them. They don't have that power. Only parole officers. Now, in some states, like California, any sworn peace officer has that authority. In Colorado, that's not the case. Now, there are some limitations on that. And if you ever want the case law class, I'll be happy to teach it. But basically, it says this. I can go search your house, and I can do whatever I want in terms of searching. If I find evidence of a new crime, I can call the cops and say, hey, Bob's got all this stuff, come get it. They can come get it, and it's okay because I found it. Because I went looking for it. If the police call me and say, hey, Bob's on parole, he's up to no good, would you go search his house and see if there's anything there? The answer is no. Because my Fourth Amendment waiver does not apply to them. I cannot work as an agent for law enforcement to get around their requirement to have a search warrant. Now, whatever I find they can have, they can use it. They don't need a warrant if I went there as in my capacity as a parole officer and I found it, but I'm not going to go search for them. That's not allowed. 2 little pieces to that are that if I'm by myself, and there's no other parole officers around, I can take the cops with me. Hey, I got to go to a home visit on Bob, and they can say, okay, and they send 4 policemen. And I say, okay, hi Bob, have a seat. Let's have a conversation. Officers, would you help me and search this house, please? That I can do. They're working for me, but I can't work for them. So as a parolee, you're giving up a lot of things, including your privacy and your right to search and seizure. We don't do that very often, but we do it. Okay. Weapons. Parolee shall not own, possess, or have under his control, custody, firearms, or weapons. Pretty simple. Association, that's kind of in a blue color right there. That's gone. We don't have that anymore. It used to say we can determine who you are allowed to be with and hang out with and associate with. That condition is gone, except in the cases of sex offenders and gang members. The parole board can specify you're not allowed to be with other gang members or other sex offenders. So that was there and now it's gone. Employment. Parolee shall seek and obtain employment, shall participate in full-time employment or education, and they're supposed to prove to us every time they come in if they have a job how much money they're making, because having a job and making money is one of the keys to success. It's one of the highest risk needs things that we encounter that they need to overcome to succeed in this. Alcohol or drugs. You're still prohibited from using alcohol or drugs while they're on parole, if we're testing for it. Now, quite honestly, most states don't care if you use alcohol. That is a really, really, really low-level violation right now. But you're not allowed to use drugs or alcohol, and that includes marijuana. So even though it's legal in Colorado, parolees can't have marijuana. Child support, you have to pay your child support. And I think that's my last slide. Okay. No? Okay, go ahead. So what do? Parole officers. We work all day, every day. Every time I get promoted, I know I'm going to work harder. Every time I get promoted, I make less money. True statement. But we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If people call us because a parolee is doing something, or the police call us, we got to answer our phone. That's our job. All day long, and we have to be there to supervise. So like right now, as a supervisor, I'm not going to have any parolees that I supervise. Officer Gonzalez has a caseload. She can be anywhere between 30 and 80. What do you got now?
About 63.
53?
63.
63. So years ago, we were short-staffed. I got to the point where as a parole officer, I had over 100 people on my caseload. How much management am I really doing when I supervise other people? Okay. So we're on call every day. We have to ensure compliance with all state statutes, regulations, parole board conditions, agreements. Code of penal discipline are the rules and laws that govern the behavior of inmates. They have their own rules because they're not on parole yet. And other established standards for the supervision of offenders. Primary work location. We have offices all over the state. So my partner at one time had the distinction of being the parole officer in Dinosaur, Colorado. Anybody know where the hell Dinosaur, Colorado is? And she didn't either. She worked there. We do all kinds of work in the field, as you saw the video earlier. We're out knocking on doors to people's houses. We're going to their schools, their places of employment. They're treated really there. We're verifying that they put in applications for the right kind of assistance. But we actually do a lot of transportation of people between facilities, and so they're coming out of prison. Sometimes we'll transport them to the parole office, or we'll transport them from one office to another, or we may transport parolees from facility to facility. We do a lot of those kinds of things that they may require that. Maybe they have a mental illness, and we just set them out the front gate at Sterling, they're never going to get to it, so they may go down. There may be a lot of those kinds of things that we do. So parole officers work under a team leader, which is kind of like a sergeant. That's where I just was not too long ago. And he works for a supervisor, and again, they plan all that. So Officer Gonzalez, as an example, has somebody that commits a parole violation. What does she do? The first thing she does is she completes an online tool called the CBDMP, which is basically you check the boxes and the tool tells you what to do. Bob did this. The computer says, well, you do this. The officer has a little discretion, but not a lot, because they have to follow what the tool recommends. They then take that to a supervisor and say, Bob did this. The tool says I should do that. The supervisor has to approve it. If this is a revocation process where the person's done something bad, they're going to be in custody, maybe returned to the facility. The supervisor approves it, then he goes all the way up to headquarters, and the senior management team of the parole division reviews each and every case and determines what's going to happen. In some cases, they say it's not a big deal. Dismiss the complaint, release them, don't do anything. Other times, they say proceed and do this or do that. Officers are also doing the case planning and treatment planning. They're doing assessments on these people to determine what kind of treatment they may need. They're referring to the right agencies to get in treatment. Monitor compliance. So here's the deal. I may not have a directive from the parole board that says you're going to drug test every so often. But if I find you under the influence or believe that you're under the influence, I can test you. And if that test is positive, then I can ask the board to require testing. So it's very careful. We have to be very careful about supervising people, making sure that they're living where they're supposed to be, they're paying their restitution. Here's a quick trivia that you may not know. You always see these ads on TV for lawyers, and there's one in the room, so I gotta be nice, but nobody's for that. Okay, so here's the deal. Bob comes down the street at 1 in the morning, driving really fast. He slams into your brand new Mercedes parked on the street. He totals the Mercedes. Bob doesn't have insurance. Your insurance company says, screw you, we ain't paying for it, it's his fault. Okay, fine. They go to court, you sue Bob, they say, Bob, you owe him the money for his Mercedes. What happens then? I'll tell you what happens then. Nothing. You don't get your money. Unless Bob pays it. The court is not a collection agency. They order that he pay it, but if he doesn't, it's your job to collect it. The court doesn't collect it. So we have this all the time with offenders who have to pay restitution, but they don't. It's actually an issue between them and the court, but we're supposed to supervise that and make sure they're making payments. But just so you know, you go to court, you win, you're not necessarily getting any money because the court's not going to collect it for you. Yeah, the court's going to say he owes it to you. Same thing applies to parolees. We have to make sure they're in the right treatment. We have to have all their assessments done and have a supervision plan done for every offender to be sure that they're supervised properly. Parole officers talk to everybody. They interact with treatment providers, they interact with employers, whatever the case may be. We provide crisis intervention. A lot of us are trained crisis intervention people, so we learn how to talk to people. Several of us, including myself, gone to the FBI school with crisis negotiators. Most of what we do is talk. Make sure that everybody's compliant. Make sure that we're filling out the right forms if there's a violation. And this is straight out of the job description. Most of which are managed in the community and do not require arrest. That's relatively new. That wasn't there for years ago. Used to be if you violated your parole, you went back to prison. That was all I was doing. So we do hearings, which means you're going to pretend to be an attorney during the hearing. You're going to present your case to a judge or a hearing officer. You're just like you were the DA or a public defender or whatever. You're going to present your case, and they're going to determine whether or not what happens in that hearing. Lots and lots of training, and yes, we are police officers. So, you ever hear the thing, parole guys aren't real cops? Yeah, we are. We're state police. We have the same authorities anybody does. We're required to be trained in firearms, arrest control, first aid, all those things. We have to be post certified by the state police. And be on call 24 hours a day. Have to be available for all kinds of things. Recently, we deployed to help do firefighting duties in our environment. But we did perimeter control, we did evacuations down to the Levita fire and other places. We provided security at the Democratic National Convention in 2008. We do all kinds of things like that as a sign of requirement. So, to be one of us, what do you need? You need an education, preferably a college degree. You need any one of those things. Or an equivalent amount of experience. We can't hire you without a degree, but obviously degrees have their advantages, and we would encourage you to get a degree from the educational institution of your choice, which of course would be UC. My son graduated from here, so I got to show him. And Landra's a master's student here, so she's little. Okay, go ahead. Now that you graduate from a police academy, we actually have a program now that if you are not certified as a peace officer, we can send you to the academy at our expense and train you to be a peace officer before you come to work for us. Those jobs are limited, but it will save you $8,000 to $10,000 in attending the freestanding academy if that's your desire to do that. Okay. You're 21 years old and not having felony convictions. Okay. So it wasn't really a group, but it kind of is. So I'm going to stop now, and here's what we're going to do. Each one of these folks is going to talk to you for a minute. They're going to get to tell you whatever they want to tell you. Please hold your questions till the very end. And at the very end, we'll ask everybody questions all at once. So, Mr. Bowman, alphabetically, you get to go first.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Brett Bowman will now speak to you.
So they can speak in this. Can you guys hear me? Does this work? Can you hear me? All right. I was convicted in 2001. I was in a bar fight, basically. Walked a girl to her car, and she kissed me goodnight, gave me her phone number. Last phone number I got. Walked back into the party. Her ex was there. Her brother was there. A couple other guys. They asked me to leave. So I left. They followed me in my truck. They beat me unconscious. 40 stitches in my face. Broken bones. When I came to, I crawled to my pickup truck. And the mirror was dangling to the side of my truck. I fixed my nose. Broke again, no big deal. It's not the first bar fight I've been in. But I walked around to the driver's door and the window was broke. That's what pissed me off. You are all over 18, right? Well, that's what pissed me off. I opened up my toolbox. I got out a corn knife. It's a type of machete. I walked back into the party and I swung it to the left and I cut a guy's arm almost off. Swung it to the right. I missed the guy I was aiming for. And this one hurts. Because I hit a girl. I cut her thumb almost off. It was dangling. I tried to help her. What good am I? I'm the bad guy now. Tried to help her, then there was no help to be done. I got beat some more, the cops come. I was sentenced to 38 years in prison. They didn't care that I was jumped first. They didn't care about anything. They never even heard my story. They threw a sentence range at me from 48 to 96 years. What do? They brought a plea bargain to me, 38 years. If I take this plea bargain, I'm going to see my kid. There's aggravating factors out there, ladies and gentlemen, that people do not realize are there. Simple assault, I think it's 6 to 12 or 3 to 6, something like that. Well, you aggravate that with a weapon, and it goes to 6 to 12. You aggravate it for a crime of violence. What the hell is that? But it's an aggravating factor. 12 to 24. Well, I got 12 to 24 for this guy, 19 years. 12 to 24 for this girl, for her thumb, 19 years. 19 and 19, 38 years. They run it bow-legged. They didn't run mine together, concurrent. They stacked it. And on top of that, they gave me 5 years parole, which, since the supervisor here, I would tell him I'm very glad to be doing. So, 38 years. A lot of soul searching while I was inside. You can do time 2 ways. You can buck the system. You can be a convict, you can be a badass, fight all the time, do whatever you want to do. Drugs are in there. Anything you want, you can get. I decided not to go that route. I avoid fighting. There was a few, some you can't avoid. But I tried to follow the rules. They said lock down, I locked down. They said strip, I stripped. Didn't matter. Your self-distancing, everything is taken away from you. You took it away from yourself, but it's all taken away. But I followed the rules. I got into a class called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Have anybody read that book? Incredible book. It will change your life. I got into that program really heavy. I become a core group member, and I started to live that life. What that life does is tell you, what the book tells you, and what it basically explains is what you're centered around, or what I was centered around before I went to prison. I was self-centered. I was a piece of shit. This is real talk, people. This is real talk. That's what I was. I was a great husband, great father, great supporter. Always worked. But I was also an alcoholic. I loved to shoot pool. I worked second shift. When I went home, my babies were sleeping. My wife was sleeping. She didn't want me to wake her, so why go home? It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to shoot pool, drink a couple beers. That's how I did it my whole life. Until I was 41 years old. I love shooting pool. I love throwing darts. But that isn't the responsible person that I really needed to be. That was self-centered. I thought about me and me only. So 7 Habits taught me that my center needs to be around principles, to be honest, respectful, loyal. All of the principles that we take for granted, that most of us have. We have a lot of morals and values, but our center isn't principles. Our center is drugs. Our center is some people money, some people faith. Mine was self-centered. So it's changed now to a principle center. 7, 8 years ago, something like that. I read the book and I started 7 Habits by the end of the courtroom. And that's when I knew I was onto something. I could be better, I could change. I don't want to come out and be the alcoholic that I was and do what I was doing. So I read the book, I taught the class, and I was rubbing shoulders with the ex-director of DOC, Gary Gasco. "15 years went by. I saw the parole board. There was a letter. There was a letter from Mr. Gaskell asking for my parole, recommending my parole. Oh, I got parole. It's hard, even though I thanked him, because he passed away a couple months ago. If it was not for Mr. Gaskell, if it was not for 7 Habits, and I actually have to include Rebecca Oates and the parole board that believed in me, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd still be in prison. I'd be following rules and being stripped out and playing their game. But instead, I'm with my children, have an incredible career. I believe you spoke about the CDL course. That's what I did. I took that course. Department of Parole paid for it. You paid for it. Thank you. And now I drive a semi-tractor trailer. $80,000 a year. 2 years I've been on. I got the nicest Harley you can imagine. And that's what I do on Sundays. I don't drink anymore. Although I have had a beer. March Madness. Guys, couldn't say no. I got in trouble for it. Don't get me wrong. Didn't go back to prison, but next March Madness supervisor, I'm going to have another one. Hopefully I'll be off parole. Prison was hell. It was what you made it. There was a lot of good times. I met a lot of good friends, met a lot of good people. There's guys in there that shouldn't be in. There's guys that just made a mistake. And I'll promise you, out of this room, quite a few of you know somebody that's in prison. If it isn't a family member, then, and I pray it isn't, but people make mistakes. Some are bad, some are worse than others. And you have to believe in them, they have to believe in themselves that they can change. Well, I changed. If you have any questions, you can ask me anything you want at the end of this class. All right, thank you for your time.
I can tell you, after having done this for years, that I can stand up here and talk all day long. It's easy. This is hard. This is hard. You bare your soul to a room full of strangers that you've never seen before. This is hard. So we really appreciate them coming to do this. So now, Mr. Wayne Little, your turn, sir. You do whatever you want.
All right, how y'all doing? Y'all can hear me?
Oh, yeah.
All right, my name is Wayne Little. The state refers me to as 66268. On the streets, they refer to me as Big Sight. I used to love being Big Sight. That was my life. Affiliated, gang affiliated, sold dope, fought, you name it, I've done it. But that's not the way that I was raised. My mother was a captain in the Army. I had a full ride scholarship to Jackson State University. Went to the military. A lot of people will tell you, they say, life chose me. The life didn't choose me, I chose the life. Because I was looking to be validated as a man. I was looking to be validated as a person. Because I didn't know who I was internally. So in doing that, I went into all the wrong places trying to be validated. Y'all can relax a little bit, because I remember being in the same position y'all was in. My freshman year of college, I sat in the room and was just sat there and looked like a puppet. It was uncomfortable and everything else. Because I didn't know who I was. First time in prison was in 1990. I don't know a lot of people's stories. I heard a comment where someone said, oh, being a convict was being a roughneck or whatever the case may be. Well, in the years that I went to the penitentiary, a convict wasn't the one that was being a roughneck. A convict was the one that was keeping things in order. A convict was the ones that the officers was coming to saying, hey man, get your group together because I don't want to do the paperwork. A convict was the one that was running his pod, that was going to take care of things so that there wasn't a whole bunch of drama, there wasn't a whole bunch of craziness that was going on. So recently, as I've been seeing in the system, because I just got out in February, so I've been out since February 16th. Convict is a different thing now, because they tell you now a convict is the one that's trying to get over on you and everything else. That's not a convict, that's an inmate. See, a lot of y'all are going into this profession, and what you're going to deal with is a lot of inmates, because there's no honor amongst thieves no more. There's no honor in the streets no more. So because there's no honor, you're dealing with a whole bunch of inmates that they're going to try to get over on. There's some of you didn't have the greatest upbringing or whatever the case may be that's going to go in there and try to be cool with them. That's going to be like, oh man, I understand where you come from. I listen to Lil Wayne and whoop, whoop, whoop. And they're going to look at you like, man, that shit don't mean nothing to me. Because they're going to read it. It's just like if you play football or if you're a gymnastics star or whatever you do, and somebody comes to you trying to say that they play football or gymnastics, and you can look at them and you can tell they don't even do that. Well, that's what they do in the system. Be you. Know who you are internally. Understand that you want to do this job because you want to help somebody. Or you want to help your community. One of the two. Now, I just did finish doing 21 years. 21 years. And I promise you it was hell. Because I went into the system hating life. They gave me a 48-year system from robbery, burglary, and assault. And then they turned around and gave me the habitual criminal. Matter of fact, the day that they sentenced me, I flashed on the judge. Because you just gave a murderer 12 years. I ain't killed nobody, but I got a whole bunch of felonies. You give me 48. I tried to turn the courtroom over. 48. So then they put me in Ag Seg. So I spent 2 years in Ag Seg where I didn't have no dealings with no people. Matter of fact, Ag Seg is 23-1. Meaning that you stay in your cell for 23 hours and you only come out one time a day. And that's to take a shower and maybe catch a little glimpse of the TV. And then you go right back to your cell. In them cells, you get real religious. I was the world's greatest Christian in that cell by myself. But as soon as they sent me to DOC, guess what I did? What's up, cuz? I started playing the game again. I sold dope, I sold heroin, I sold crack, I sold weed. The prices y'all get out here is ridiculous. Because for a little cap of weed, you're paying $100. For a chapstick cap, $100. Y'all think y'all like weed now. You go in there, you ain't gonna like it, I promise you. But that's the reality of it. It's a crazy world. But I did that because I didn't love me. I didn't love me. I didn't know who I was. All I wanted to do was fit in. Matter of fact, I was crying every night worrying about how I was going to make it to do this 48 years. Because I had a whole bunch of partners in there that didn't make it through 48 years. Matter of fact, they were so involved in the gang or involved in the life or so getting high all the time that they died right there in the system. Because they didn't know how they was going to make it. I didn't know how I was going to make it. Eventually, I got my 48 reduced down to 12 years. Went for a proportionality review. They reduced me down to 12 years. Guess what? I got religious again. All of a sudden, I'm in the church house. I was a Bible thumper. And there's nothing wrong with being a Bible thumper. That's the reality of it. But it got me through. Well, 2004, they called me back to court. I'll never forget December 18th, 2004. They came to my room, knocked on my door. They said, pack it up, you got to go to court. I'm like, what I got to go to court for? They reduced my sentence down to 12 years. I'm good. Went back to court. Judge said, Mr. Little, I'm sorry to inform you, but your appeal has been overturned. We're giving you back 48 years. That's when I had to make a decision if I was going to continue to be a Bible thumper, continue to play the game, or was I really going to make a change? Was I really going to walk away from being locked up? Or was I really going to make a legacy of where I was at? Because I promise you I'm not supposed to be standing here right now. I don't kill a 48-year sentence until the year 2042. Wrap your minds around that. 2042. So I have to make a decision right then and there. Do I die here? Or do I make a change? I decided to make a change. I decided to find out who Wayne Little was. Not Big Sight, not 66268, but Wayne Little. And when I found out who Wayne Little was, I found out that I'm not a bad dude. I don't have to prove myself all the time. I like me. I not only like me, I love me. And when I found out that I love me, I began to make a change. So the change had to start somewhere inside because, you know, we can all sit here and say, hey man, I had the best upbringing, I had the best this, or whatever the case may be, but we all come from some dysfunctions. So I had to deal with my dysfunctions. My dysfunction was my daddy wasn't there. I didn't know who my daddy was. So because I didn't know who my dad was, it kept me out in the streets trying to find someone to look up to, a mentor. I had some abuse in my family. I had to deal with the abuse in my family and everything else and come to grips with it and understand that it wasn't my fault, that whatever the abuses that was going on wasn't my fault. And it was okay. See, when I start coming to grips with that stuff there, then I start doing things in my community, even in the penitentiary system, to where it was a positive. I stopped selling dope. Matter of fact, I had my partners come running up on me and they were like, oh, what's up, Psych? I said, my name ain't Psych no more. My name is Wayne Little. They was like, oh, what happened with you? I start carrying a Bible and everything, looking crazy. Y'all know y'all do it around here. I got the Christian brothers running around. Y'all look crazy. They ain't crazy though. They got a remedy. Listen to them sometime. But understand, I start making my change right then and there. And when I start making my change, I start feeling better about myself. Matter of fact, you know, and I'm always like to be a snazzy dresser, so I always iron my greens. I always shine my boots. So that was never a difference for me. But I start walking different. I start walking with my shoulders held back. I start walking with my chest up. I start making a change right there in the facility. But it still wasn't easy because now, with all the positive that I'm trying to do, there's still a negative that's coming at you. There's still a negative that's coming at you. To be walking the chow, and right when you walk the chow, somebody's about to reach over your shoulder and they hit another dude in the head with a lock. This is what you signed up for. That's crazy. To be sitting in the chow hall eating your Sunday meal and a dude comes in with a shank and stabs another dude in the neck. So now you don't even get to eat your Sunday meal because there's blood all over your food. TV gives you a nice little picture of it, but it's reality, y'all. It's a reality. It happens. Not everybody in there is in the change. My first time down, I wasn't in there to change. I promise you, when I got up out the joint, I was an OG. You couldn't tell me nothing. I was on point. I'm about to run the block. I'm about to do whatever I want to do. I'm about to do anything, and nobody better not say nothing crazy to me. Because I was it. Kept getting out doing the same thing over and over again. Over and over again. Understand, the job, the profession that y'all are about to go into, the field that you're about to go into, there's people that want to change. And they don't need a savior, and they don't need a mother, and they don't need fathers. What they need is someone to listen to them. Because usually if you're listening to them, they're going to realize how stupid they sound. And once they realize how stupid they sound, and you're not trying to identify with them, they're going to make a change. I've seen it over and over again. My last 15 years in the system, I worked in the chapel. I got my associate's degree in theology. I'm about to be ordained in November. It's excellent. I'm out now. Am I still nervous? I'm nervous every day. I wake up every day with the thought that I could be going back. Every day. I wake up with the thought every day that sometimes I'm not even worthy to be free. So the thing that I would like to leave with you today rather, it's not night yet. But the thing that I would like to leave with y'all is to stay motivated. Stay motivated and understand just because you're in school, just because you don't come from a sorrow story or anything like that, understand that your choices can take you someplace that you don't want to go. We all say mistakes. Oh, I made a mistake. I was drunk driving. Oh, man, I made that one mistake. Or, oh, I put this in my pocket and got this little case and that's a mistake. Those aren't mistakes. Those are choices. They're not mistakes. A mistake is if I'm walking, something's right there and I trip over it. That's a mistake. But as long as I have a functioning mind and I know right from wrong and I do something, I make a choice. So understand, ladies and gentlemen, today, if you ain't heard it from nobody else, make the right choices. Because your choice can lead to a negative future if it's the bad choice.
Just want to give up after that? Quite the speech. You gonna go to his church? Huh? Go to his church? Oh, go to his church. All right. Lastly, Christopher Christopher Boat's going to speak to you.
Well, I'm not going to stand up. So there's three of us up here. We all are going to have different experiences as far as prison goes. We're all going to come from slightly different backgrounds when we went. We're all going to look a little bit different. Some of us are going to have tattoos and have been around gangs. Maybe some of us are going to go to bars and get in fights. And I would tell you that what's the average age on this room? 20, 18, 19? So, I got a 48-year sentence for second-degree murder. And I did my crime when I was 23. And I had never been arrested before. I didn't have a juvenile record. I think I have actually this is my parole officer right here. I think on my file is the one speeding violation. When I was 20 before I caught my case. So what I would definitely agree with above anything else is that you should be ready to make the choice when you're put in that position and if you're put in that position. I wasn't. And I chose wrong. That doesn't, the weight of that doesn't go away. I was arrested for my crime 4 years after I did it. I guess you'd be surprised on what you're capable of start pushing out of your mind a little bit to try to get through each day. It was a little bit of a relief to get arrested, finally, be able to just have it out. I did 17 years, 9 months in prison. I was extremely fortunate on how I did my time. I was part of several good programs. I was given a lot of leeway for what I was doing while I was incarcerated. That helped me get out the stuff that I was doing. I've been through all the levels that they taught to. I got out about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I did 4 months in a halfway house. Went on ISP with ankle monitors, so just amongst everybody. And just got paroled a few weeks ago. Just signed the papers last week. You know, there's I don't know how many of you are actually going to go into law enforcement or go work in prisons or for parole or anything else. I have no idea. I will tell you that there's some really good parole officers and there's some really good DOC corrections staff and there's some really bad ones. Sometimes it's hard to just get through. Me personally, I didn't really keep any friends while I was in prison. I met a few guys that I liked and got along with. For the most part, I walked the yard alone, did what I was doing and didn't really care too much about what anybody else was doing. Honestly, for what I did not think I would get out. I figured I would spend, there ends up being 36 years if you get all your good time. I thought I would be in prison for 36 years. That's what I was prepared to do. I am guilty of what I did. But I guess for those of you that are going to make that step, Mr. Little said it, listen to the people that you're working with or representing or watching over. A lot of them are going to try to get over on you. It's just the way it's going to be. But not all. If you can figure out how to differentiate those guys and gals, then you start making it a better place. And then you start making the difference the way it's supposed to be made. And that's when the system starts to change. I don't have really any bad things to say about the Department of Corrections. As I said, I was given a lot of latitude and a ton of opportunity. The food is horrible, I'll tell you. Stay in your guys' cafeteria and it's delicious. But don't think because you're sitting here in this college, you can't end up right where everybody's been. I'm telling you. You down straight can't. So be ready. You get tested. Do the right thing. Be ready. It's real easy and fast to do the wrong.
Okay, so we'll open up for questions. If you know who you want to address the question to, tell us that, not just to point or whatever. So remember the rules, be nice, be polite. Any questions you want? Who's first? Right there.
Mr. Christopher, I suppose you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but who do you feel?
I'm sorry.
Who do you feel?
Greg Staley,
How is your relationship?
he was not related to me at all. I was on vacation visiting a friend of mine, and he was in a relationship, drug thing going on apparently with that person's wife, and I wanted to be the tough guy friend, I guess, and the guy that would go do anything if you asked him. So I went with him to the person's house, to Greg's house. But I did not know him.
Chris, talk about when you were in prison and the programs that you started helping children.
So while I was in 2003, they started a Canine training program at the Territorial, and that happened to be the prison I was in, so I got started in that. And I started I was asked to start training service dogs for some physically challenged people. I guess I had gotten moved to another prison to help get the program started in another prison. And, my wife who was a teacher, was telling me about an autistic child that she had in her class. And I got to thinking about autism and reading about it, and developing a training program to train service dogs for autistic kids in 2005 or 6, which is now used across many organizations in the country. So I did several. They would bring, actually after jumping through a lot of hoops, first thing, no chance that they bring the kids into a prison to work solely with a convicted murderer. They finally did. And I had kids being brought in to work with me and dogs.
I mean, you made sea change in your personality. When you were sitting there talking and telling me that it doesn't matter what happens from here on, we're going to always do the right thing. It doesn't matter if we're back in prison or back out. That was a change. How did you come to that point? Was it an overnight thing or was it a slow evolution?
No, it took, I promise you, it took some time. It was a gradual change. It was a progressive change. There was mentors and stuff that came into the system that you have a choice. You know, I hear a lot of the stories that, oh, I want to thank this person. No, because everybody has that opportunity to make those changes from the people that come in. But you have to make the choice. You have to make the choice that you see something in somebody else that you want to follow or you want to examine. And so there was examples that I seen by people that was coming into the system and I was like, oh, I like that right there. I'm going to take a piece of that. Or I like that right there and I'm going to take a piece of that. And as these people would come and I start putting my stuff together, I just start becoming one with the universe. I have a saying I love to say is that once you understand who you are, you become one with the universe. And when you become one with the universe and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you don't have to go seek out fame and riches. The universe provides it. And that's where I'm at today, is that the universe is providing for me. I got a beautiful wife, I got a beautiful house, I got a beautiful ministry that's getting ready, and I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for it. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
This is a question for all of you. If you guys could change one thing about the system, what would you change?
I would change how they deal with people that's done a lot of time when they get out in the transition. I went to a halfway house when I first got out. 21 years of looking people eye to eye. You say something crazy, I'm going to confront you about and stuff like that. You just don't get rid of it because you put me on the street. And what I found was when I went to the halfway house, I was acting that way. You know, it wasn't like I get passionate about stuff. If I truly believe in what I talk about, I get passionate about it and I'll kind of approach it. And all of a sudden it was like, you're trying to intimidate me. But that's what I've been knowing for 21 years. It's not that I'm trying to intimidate you, that's just how I know how to interact. So I would say that if they had more programs to deal with people that's been in the system for longer times, instead of just saying, now get out and act like everybody else, I think that would be better.
I would probably change how they deal with custody levels as you progress through the system. You go through custody levels, so you might start at a very high custody prison, end up down low, but there's limits even regardless. So they have a point system. You do good, the points drop, and you go to the next lowest prison. But in attachment to the point system is how much time you actually have. So you could be in a medium security prison. I don't know if you both probably ran into this and have very low points. I think I sat in a medium security prison for 2 years with 12 points, or what would have normally been, I should have been able to go to a minimum security prison, a minimum restricted. So they have a system in place, a point system, that they don't follow. I think that would help start to better reintegrate guys. The lower prisons have more programs that are meant to help you try to get out, because the guys that are in those places tend to have very shorter sentences and they know they're going to start at Lyman Correctional Facility, Ordway, Sterling High Side. I think Lyman might be 60% life sentences. That's where I started. They don't have programs for guys to get out. They don't, as long as you're not stabbing your neighbor, really, that's all they are trying to make sure everybody gets in and out of the chow hall without getting blood on their trail. And he said that he wasn't kidding. That's prison like that is, they're just trying to get guys through. So if they would be better just implementing the program that they have in place, get the guys down in custody and more ready to get out, it would be a lot easier.
To elaborate on that, the points, you get so many points for, good behavior, so many points for your age, so many points for different little things. I can't even think. I try to forget anything and everything in prison. Some of it was really fun. I mean, I hate to say that. When Wayne was talking about the incident in the chow hall, and we've all seen it. But one day I was in the chow hall and there was a hit call, and the guys told us all, don't eat, don't go to the chow hall. There's going to be a hit in the chow hall. The white boys knew that. We knew it was going to go down. But it was hamburger. And I wanted my burger. So I grabbed my partner and said, let's go, man, let's hurry. So we could eat our burgers and then we'll bounce. So we got in line. I seen the guys coming in. I'm like, oh, this is going down. We got to hurry. So we got our trays and we got to the table and it was going down. And the sort team already knew about it. They come in the back door and we got these grenades with little rubber BBs. And my best friend had been in Vietnam. And this grenade comes flying through the air. And he's like, incoming. And he dives under the table. So he and I are under the table. And the reason this is funny because my hand comes up over the table and I'm searching for my burger. Like all this is going down. And he's like, what are you doing? I got my hand. We're belly down on the ground almost. And I find this burger. And I bring it down. But there was a bite out of this burger. It wasn't mine. And I started eating this burger. And he's like, are you crazy? Right now there's tear gas and everything. Tears are running down our eyes and I'm eating this burger. He's like, I need mine. I'm like, I'll get it. You don't want to stick your head up because there could be another grenade coming in. They hurt. Well, we never even got hit because he yelled incoming. We got under the table. And it exploded right above our table. I mean, it would have been bad. While you was up there telling that story, I was almost laughing because I said about my best friend Derek. I mean, 3 friends in 16 years. He's still, but he's up for parole. He's up for halfway house next month or next week. So I got to talk to him on the phone every day. And I actually was a guest speaker at Sterling less than a month ago, and I got to see him. So that was weird. But this grenade going off in this story, and there's not that that's a good time, but when it was all over, when we laughed and we told that story forever, how we both got our burgers. I found it, and we was eating them burgers with tears running down our eyes, and it was too funny. But it isn't, you know what I mean? At that time it was serious, but me and I found a way to laugh. And we got back to the child, we did a crazy story. There's so many, it's nuts in there, really. But getting back to the point system. Your point is, and then unfortunately with us when we came in, we had so much time until our MRD. You got 2002, let's say 2002 I hit the system. 38 years on top of that. Well, I got a point for every year. So did Wayne and so did Chris. We got a point for every year. So right off the bat, I had 38 points. Plus these other seven more points or 9 more points for whatever that was for. And it's like, I can't go to a minimum. I have to go to Lyman. I have to go to Sterling. I have to go to Ordway, territorial. I have to go to a real prison. And I was there for years. I was 5 years I did in Ordway, and all of a sudden at 1 o'clock in the morning, the SORT team comes in their black outfits and everything that they got their tear gas, and they packed us, I think they packed us 100 people. At 1 o'clock in the morning, we're on a bus, black box, like this, it's nothing nice. Handcuff me all you want, but don't black box me. That is not comfortable. And we're on an airplane, we're flying to Oklahoma. I did 2 years in Oklahoma where they built more prisons. They built more prisons because of the aggravating fact that I was talking about earlier. You get in trouble, you got a little bit of weed on you. No big deal. Oh, your partner's got a gun in the car. Your partner's got a knife in the car. But that's a gun we just go shoot, practice shoot. We ain't drug dealers. We ain't some. That's an aggravating factor. Now you're going to prison because your buddy had a gun. And he's not going to say it's his. He ain't going to go. ain't your buddy no more. He ain't gonna send you money in prison. None of my friends, I got high school friends galore. I got out and they're all over Facebook. Hey, how you doing? Fuck you. Plain and simple. When I needed you, you weren't there. Now you want to be my friend on Facebook. They're not.
Questions?
Mr. Fred, did the guys who dumped you, did they get convicted or caught?
No, and that's the part as attorneys, if however many are going to be public defenders, the public pretenders, I call them. Like Chris was talking about, there's the one or two, and you really have to try to figure out who's not playing you and try to help them. If that's your job, is to defend it. Well, anymore, that's not what it is. They're so overwhelmed with cases. We all know that. The DA starts pushing deals. You guys might not know it, but it's illegal for a public defender to go to the DA and ask for a deal. They can't do that. They can't. I can get my whole case thrown out. I tried to get her to do that. I told her because I knew if she went to the DA and asked for it, then I could file and get out of this nightmare I was in. But she didn't fall for it. But she didn't care about anything. And does it matter? Does that matter? I still made my choice. Though I was intoxicated, that's not an alibi or that's not a defense. I made the choice to drink. I made the choice after I was beat. Instead of calling the cops, going to the hospital, doing what I should have done. The only witness was the lady that kissed me goodnight. But her ex was there. They weren't final. Their divorce wasn't final. She can't testify against me. And she's not going to put her brother in prison. So does it matter? I still made that choice and I hurt two people. And I did that. So as an attorney, listen to all aspects. Listen to everything. I never even got to present any of that. Why was a machete in my car? It wasn't a machete. It was a corn knife. I'm from Iowa. It's a corn knife. We use it to chop down rolled corn when we walk beans. It's a tool. For me, it's a tool. But to the DA, it's a weapon. Do you see in the corn knife, not knowing what it is? It's blunt. It's flat on the end. I do a lot of construction. I used to use it for the eaves on houses when I would paint. It's like a long paint scraper. But nobody asked those questions. I had used it that night, actually earlier, to make a fruit salad. Crazy. They didn't know that. When I drew it and I showed it to the public defender, she was like, "You're going to show this to a jury?" It was a watermelon I cut in half. Then I took a pineapple, cut it at an angle. With toothpicks, I put that pineapple on the back end of that watermelon. Then I cut a banana and I made the head of the swan. The pineapple was the tail. And then I took bananas and I made wings on it. Hollowed out the middle and put all the pineapple and watermelon in the bowl. That wasn't brought up in court. Nobody cared about a swan watermelon. But that's what I used to cut it through. That's what I did. Besides the package.
Questions?
Mr. Wayne, there are a lot of stories in the Bible about God using imperfect and even violent people to spread his message and to spread his grace. How are you going to use your experience to minister to your new flock?
At this present time, I'm in the process of starting a nonprofit organization that's going, my attempt is to go back into the facilities and motivate men to know that they are loved, that they can do, that no one's forgot about. That's one of the biggest things that's inside the system is that we feel forgotten. Like people forgot about us.
life. And as with my family, we try to help them with as much support as we could. But my question is, does family support actually help you want to change as a person? Because my uncle, I think, kept seeing him do the same pattern all over again. So I'm just wondering if family support does actually help you during those times.
With a capital H, hell no. I mean, it's good to write letters to them, but sending them money and stuff like that, you know, you gotta understand commissary in there is real cheap. So when you send that money to them and they're able to get the 50 sack, they can run around looking like ballers and everything else, you know what I'm saying? And they're still doing the same dumb stuff. I like tough love. Tough love, hey man. Go get you a job that's only paying 60 cents a day. Go get you a job that's paying $1 and learn how to budget. I'm still gonna write you, I'm still gonna send you a card, but I'm not gonna send you that financial support that you're dependent on so that you can think that you're somebody in front of a whole bunch of nobodies.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say that, you know, this is my husband, and I noticed the common theme with all of them, all the time that they spent in there, because I'm only dealing with him. These guys are so emotional. I just thought he was a big crybaby. This stuff is really important to them, and they're carrying this stuff for the rest of their lives, and it's just, so what I say to you guys, because you're going to be in the system, just treat these men and women like human beings. Give them the respect that you would want, and you will get it back from them. So that's all I have to say about it. Maybe I got to go back to work. But yeah, it was a pleasant seeing all of you guys. Okay, take care. Good night.
I'm better today than I was back then. And if I don't go through those experiences, I would never be who I am today. There's a thing that's called embrace the process. What we do a lot of times is we don't embrace our bad along with our good. We want to overlook the bad and just hold on to the good. But if you embrace that stuff that's bad, there's lessons in it. And those lessons are something that's foundational. So once we learn to embrace those, here's the example. Let's use a caterpillar. It crawls on its stomach for so long before it becomes a butterfly. It even makes its own sarcophagus to die in before it becomes a butterfly. What if it never embraced that process? We'd never see it. So we have to be able to embrace those situations in order to be who we're going to become.
Any other questions? Thank you for it.
How did each of y'all cope with being incarcerated? What kept y'all I don't know if it's for you to die or but what kept y'all
Wait, I hold every major record in DOC. I squat 600, deadlift 7, bench press 4. So the weight power is my call. But understand that's only a superficial thing. You know what I'm saying? I still cried a million nights. How am I gonna make it? But we all find something. I think yours is crocheting.
Oh, yeah.
The dog, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, you find something to make yourself feel valued every day. But there's still those lonely nights where you're sitting in your room where nobody's around. And you're like, what the hell have I got myself into?
Everybody finds some type of a pastime that makes time easier. I got into stained glass and with a hobby shop. We had one hobby shop. They're all closed now. A lot of programs have been taken. New ones have been taken to place. I think you touch on it for a minute. They've got parole officers in the facilities now. They're planning for releases or job interviews, all this kind of stuff is taking place. It's changing. They need place for them. One of them, they took the hobby shop out. But I got into stained glass, and then I got into painting. And then they took all that kind of stuff away. And commissary list come out and it had yarn and needles. even said about it. I was for the good behavior. And I'm like, man, I don't crochet. I ain't shit, personally. I'm like, but then I started seeing all this stuff that these guys were crocheting. And one thing, and Wayne just touched on it, tough love about sending money to prison. I agree with about 90% of that, but send a little. Send a little so they can buy the armor. Send a little so they can just get by. The guys that got the big bucks, you're sending them, or your mom's sending them, or your aunt, or whatever, more than likely they're on a poker table and they're just losing. And I hate to see it. I got into a couple of scraps because of that. Your people are sending you money, and I see you just blowing it and then going to the store, you know, and being a big ball. My hustle was I was a barber. I was a barber before I went in. I was a cosmetologist. I worked for Saks Fifth Avenue. I did ladies' nails. So I had that artistic ability. So the crochet part was a hustle. I could make a pair of baby blues and sell them for 10 tokens. I could take those 10 tokens to the store and buy soup or a bag of chili or some cheese, powdered cheese. So I'd keep ordering yarn and I'd keep crocheting. But then I got good. I got real good. I started I made a Denver Bronco pillow of the horse in orange and white. That's this big. It's huge. The first one I sold for $150. The second two I made alone. I made stuffed animals. I made, you name it, crochet. I can say lies. But it's a hustle. So don't get me wrong about it in prison. The art of the state class is all a hustle to survive and make it. My kids is what drove me to be straight and to follow the rules. It was all about my children. Only.
So outside of the weight piles, crochet, hobby shops, basketball courts, guys go in prison for the most part. I won't speak for these guys and generalizing. Some guys go in with a long sentence and they forget the street, and that's what you might get told is you want your time to be easy, forget about what's going on in the world, forget about what your kids are doing or what your wife's not doing or how come she doesn't answer the phone when you call at 7 o'clock at night. Forget about all that and just do your time. Some guys go in and that is what drives them to either do better or do worse. Or some guys walk the yard and look at the fence the whole time. That's what I do. I've been here and worked at because everybody, most guys try to jump on the weight pile and try to get themselves in shape. And I walk the yard, look at the fence every day. Just someday you don't want to be in it. You guys find all some guys do find religion, and some guys do the religion for just the time that they're in hopes that it's going to help them get out. That somebody on the street is going to come and see and say, okay, well, we're going to help this guy. And some guys get in and walk the path both inside and then get out and walk. But there is something that everybody holds on to that helps them get through the time, hopefully. And not everybody does. It's not uncommon to stay locked down in the morning when they should be calling you to breakfast and have them come in and pull somebody out, just go eat in that cell and make it all be done. Because they didn't find something to help push them through. So, but everybody does find something. If you have somebody in, I would almost agree with what he was saying about the money. I would definitely tell you, though, to give them the support that you're there. Because he's right. You feel forgotten. And so when you know, okay, these people are counting on me to right thing, get out, get your life straight again, and live the life that you know you're missing, especially 30 plus years, 48 years, 48 years. You miss humongous chunks of life. Big ones. That was all my 30s. So make sure that they know that stuff is going on and that you are going to do it. The money, if they're going to piss it away on the table or on drugs, or then no, don't send it. Maybe just send us just enough to buy ramen soups. I'm sure all of you that live in these dorms ramen soups. Because we do.
Do you still eat them?
No.
That's my question.
I used to do this. I got, you know what, when I got home, my wife had ramen soups in the Casadana. That's how I never look real brown. Oh yeah.
I eat manhandler. I moved up to Campbell. I don't eat around. But that's my meal every night is rice, a bag of rice with a soup. Sundays I splurge, I'll eat a steak or a hamburger. It's crazy that he talks about working out because you don't give it up. I don't get it like I did inside. When I walked out, I had 19 inch arms. I wasn't as big as he was ever. But he was a beast. He was known. When he drove on the fires back away. We were together. We know. But I hit it for a different reason. I hit it because I wanted to stay in shape. Mainly to still be able to compete with my boys. Because they're beasts. They're incredible athletes. Both of them. So I finally got kept.
So it's for all of you. How did being away impact all your relationships at home? Like with your wives or moms and stuff like that?
I have a daughter. Never got to raise. She's now 19. She's in her sophomore year of college. So we talked. I wasn't there for the pinnacle. She says it's okay. But because I made a choice over my daughter not to. So it's a struggle. My mom, my brother, my brother lives in Germany. He's a police. And you can hear, one of the things that I notice is because you've been gone for so long, everybody wants to treat you and that's what I find with my mom and my brother. They want to handhold you, like, are you gonna do this? Or, come on, let me help you do this. Let me help you pour this glass of water. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. You know, I grew, maybe not in the path that I should, but I don't need to be handheld. So it has a big strain on our families. A big strain because when you're in there, you're not in there by yourself. They're doing the talking with you because they're wondering every day, are you okay? They're wondering every day, are you eating? They're wondering every day, did you get stabbed? They're wondering every day what's going on with you. So they're mentally, they're just as incarcerated as you are.
I'll say this. I have a daughter as well that I missed out on raising. We have a relationship now. Unfortunately, she does not live in the state, so it's distanced. I let her come visit me one time. State teenagers, I let her come to the prison once to see me. Other family, maybe different. be honest with you, what was the HBO one, was it off? Yeah, all get raped and all that stuff. But when you get out, people do somewhat treat you different. Personally, most of my family was fairly supportive. I had family that thought I should use the family name. They were right in that regard. So some of my family does not speak to me anymore because of what I do. But they definitely go through it.
That's what my dad told me when he first come to visit. He said, "You shamed the family name." And I said, "Your brother was in prison. What are you talking about? My uncle was in prison." He's like, "What do you mean I shamed him? He shamed his name first." Yeah, my daughter was 8 when I went in. My oldest son was 16. Bo was 14. And I come out just at 15, 16 years old. The hardest one is my daughter. She's in Texas. Married. Thank God. I worried about her so much. Didn't even worry about her. Boys are resilient. Boys are boys. Wasn't even worried about her. But my daughter, please Louise, didn't know what her stepdad was like. Was so happy when she turned 18. Was so happy when she met him on the ring. Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm scared to death of it. I really am. That's a hard one. Daddy's hero. But, yeah, she was 8. You know what's really hard is my granddaughter. She comes and stays with us all summer. And I'm sorry, I'm so emotional. No idea it's going to be like this. So my granddaughter's running around the house, and I said, "Jessica, stop. Calm down." And she said, "I'm not Jessica, who's Jessica?" When you talk about post-traumatic, the stuff that we go through, I couldn't do laundry on Sunday. No big deal, right? But I do laundry every Sunday. For 16 years, I turned my laundry bag in, and my laundry was done on Wednesday. Now I got out for 2 years, I do my laundry on Sunday. But I live with my oldest son and his fiance, and they had laundry in the wash. So what do? I walk back and forth all morning, looking at it. I don't know how many times. I went to the washer, and it's still there. They're not home. It's still there. I can't do laundry. I can't touch another person's stuff. What's the number 1 rule we got? You don't touch nobody else's stuff. It ain't mine. I can't touch it. And then finally, I think probably 2-3 hours later, I was like, you know what? They're going to be okay. And I got a lot of guys that put their stuff in. And I didn't want it. But there's little things every day that I can speak for myself, that I go through, and I'm right back in prison. I woke up the other morning. I swore to God I was in the cell. I remember the flashlight hit me in the eye when I was sleeping. But it was a car that once I came to, and I remember, I was like, oh wait, that was a car. But for 16 years, every hour on the hour, every night, I had a flashlight go across my face. It's their job to make sure I'm still alive. So I don't know if it still hits you guys. I know you guys have been out there, but it's every day I'm still in prison. There's something little.
Today was my second time even with medical. I don't eat off of that. Today was my second time. When I eating off plastic for 21 years. So just the metal hitting your teeth is just kind of like somebody running their hands across the chalk.
And see, when I picked up the butter knife that they got here, first thing I thought, I can't even. Girls and I can't even. I'm sitting at the table, 2 parole officers with a knife.
We were scared to death. Questions?
This is from, I know you mentioned that siblings and that home is not. So, how is it like being involved?
Wonderful. Great.
You know, think about this. You're getting out of prison. You've done 15, 20 years in prison, even if you only did a couple of years. But let's use us for an example. The bus picks you up. You've got 2 boxes. All your belongings, all your clothes or whatever it is you have that you're leaving with. 2 boxes. Oh, and you got your TV. That's in a box with your coffee pot and your radio. You're on the bus. This is what happened to me. It's a blizzard. They take me straight to the parole office. They drop me off. I have to make 3 trips to the bus to get all the boxes. And they carry them on to the parole office. Do my little interview. It's noon because I came from Canyon City all the way to Denver. It's 1 o'clock now. Freezing cold outside. And the parole officer says, you need to go do a UA right now. That's 6 blocks away. How am I going to carry all this stuff? Well, I decided to just put it all in the corner. This is my worldly possessions. This shit means a lot. This is all I got. This is all I have. I go over to the UA, wait another hour. Pipes are frozen. No UAs today. What do? I can wait another 45 minutes for a bus. I decided to walk. Go back to the parole office. Hey, the pipes are frozen. They said I can't be UA. He says you're going to have to go to Aurora. We're different. I turned around and I said, cuff me up, take me back to prison. Because I'm not going to be able to make it to Aurora. Do what you got to do. But it's not going to happen. Not today. Not in a blizzard. 99% of that is true. The part that isn't true is I didn't come from a bus from Canyon City. My family picked me up. My boys. When I went to the parole office and I had to go over to the where the pipes were frozen, I had a ride. And we ate that day. And I had the support. And like you just said, the welcome home. Everything turned out okay. All of that is true, except for I didn't have the bus to deal with. But think if I didn't have it, and I did have a bus. And then from there I have to go to a halfway house or wherever it is I'm going to stay. Might be staying in a shelter. I don't know where I'm staying. I don't think they let you do that anymore for all like that. You have to have an address. But it's real, and I keep saying that, and it's emotional to me. But that's a great question. It was welcomed on, and it's incredible. I didn't burn my time. A lot of guys that are in prison, especially the drug dealers, they burn every tie they have, every bridge they have, every family member they've lied, stolen, cheated, and then when they get out, they don't have it. They're not going to get it because they ruined it. I can speak for myself. I didn't, and I didn't burn it in prison. My dad still talks to me.
I think mine was, I went to the halfway house first. And I had let my mom lives in Denver. So I had let her know that I was going to the halfway house, but I didn't know exactly what day. And that's the wrong thing to do around my mom, because she'll call the president to find out where he at, where you're gonna be, or whatever's gonna happen. And we pulled up in front of Comical, and 20-something years was the first time I seen my mom, and for her to scream out, "There's my baby." Yeah, that was probably one of the greatest things I'm ever going to remember about DOC coming home. And, my brother came home in July, and I think they thought I was 6 years old because I was outside flying kites with my niece, running up and down the street, and I didn't care what nobody thought. So when you're home, they embrace you. But there's, I think, in the back of their mind too, there's a thought of how long is he going to be on tours? And that's something that you have to constantly keep fighting.
I went to the halfway house as well. On the bus, which actually, I left it, we had to take the bus. The part where you walk from the bus to the inside the building, the halfway house, is a little scary because it was 17 years, 9 months, and behind a fence. You don't ever just walk outside of the fence. Yeah. And then you get there, you pull up and open the door and say, "Well, there you go, get your stuff." Wait a second, are you sure? Walk in there, use the phone, trying to just take everything in for a second and make sure it's real. Am I gonna wake up and still be on that damn phone? Or once you think, okay, it's real, and then make a phone call and tell your wife or your mom or your family where you are, and I'm here, I made it, I'm safe. Bring some laundry detergent down here and some clothes. I remember my wife came, she'd only visit, see her every weekend. But you're always in the same green outfit, almost always the same haircut, wear glasses with the same exact glasses on. She came into CAE, I was standing behind one of the glass windows in the other, like the waiting area. I watched her walk in and she looked right at me. I was in civilian clothes. I had a set of civilian clothes sent in to wear out. I don't think she didn't even recognize me for 20 seconds. I was staring right at her and, "Hello." She's right. But once she did, she started bouncing. All of a sudden. So it's, no matter what, I think even when it's hard, it's still amazing. And then it becomes, for me, it became from amazing to terrifying. To how fast could I have this yanked away from me? What rules? I've pastored my parole officer today, and this is the first time I've actually met her. I've already hit her 20 different questions. Like, what am I allowed to do? Define this exactly so that I know what this rule means. Because once you have it, freedom after so long, you don't lose it. I'm not there.
I can tell you that the trauma that they're talking about is real. We'll get people that have been in for a long time, they'll come out, and we think they're high risk, and so we put them on an ankle monitor, and we'll sit and watch them. I have guys that come out, and they never leave the house. Why? Because they're terrified. If I leave the house, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm always where I'm supposed to be. If I leave the house, parole's going to come arrest me, and you look at them, and they sit there, and they never leave the house. And then you talk to the family. Well, there's something wrong. He never comes out of his room. There's something wrong. He's hoarding the food in his room. There's something, just give him a minute. But we see it all the time. This is real trauma, real feeling that they're going through, that we see. We're detached from the emotion, it doesn't affect us quite, but we see it. They're used to being told where to go, when to go, all that stuff. And now we say, okay, go home. How do you do that? It's like learning a whole new skill. Not too long ago, years ago, if you came to these years ago, which most of you didn't, I had a guy that would come every year. He went to prison when he was 16. He's one of those that was tried and convicted as an adult when he was a juvie, because he ran a U-Haul truck through a crowd of people during the summer of violence in Buffalo, ran over a whole lot of people. Went to prison when he was 16, turned 18, got moved into a real prison, didn't get out till he was 32. Think for a minute, if you went to prison when you were 16 and came out when you were 32, what did you miss?
Everything.
High school, dating, prom, parties, driving. I have guys that come out, long-term guys, they don't know what cell phones are. They don't know how to work them. Who was talking today? They're just trying to figure out the phone. Right. So they don't know the internet. They don't know any of this stuff, because when you're in prison, time out here is moving. In there it ain't. So you get a guy who's been there that long and they don't know. Well, just get on Google and what the hell's Google? Oh, well, get on Snapchat. What? You're talking a different language. And then you put all that on top of them and you're expecting them to acclimate back into us. They don't have a clue. And so we sit in the office and pull up the thing and it's like, Bob hasn't left the house in 4 days. That is a real trauma. It's not a parole violation, but it's an issue that they're dealing with that we have to understand. And if you don't understand that, you can kind of jam yourself up, because then you're like, oh, Bob must be up to no good. He never left the house. No, Bob's terrified. Bob's a gang member, he killed somebody or whatever, but he's terrified.
And there's no reason y'all really will understand that. I got lucky. I got some partners that been down 21 plus and they got out and stuff. So when I got to the halfway house, they immediately came and got me and started holding my hand and walking me through stuff. And that's what the system needs. And I don't knock parole officers, I don't knock none of that, but they need to let us be more interactive with people that are getting out, because we understand the story. We've been there, so I can better speak to you than someone that's just learned it from a book. You know, I just learned these issues from a book or watching it or whatever the case. I've lived it. So, like a perfect example, I'm working with someone now that just got out, and I had to take them to the DHS yesterday. And while we're at DHS, their back is on the wall and they're doing this the whole time. Well, that's a penitentiary thing, because you never know who's going to do what, never be in any kind of crowds or anything like that. So if I don't recognize that, he would have been stuck on there and people would have been looking at him like he was stupid or like he had an issue or whatever the case may be. But because I can recognize it, I can go to him and be like, man, come here, you know, and not necessarily tell him something's wrong, but say, let's relax a bit. Come sit down with me. Let's look at this right here. Let's look at this right here. And ease him back into society. And that's our issue today. And I think earlier I answered that in a question and saying, what could the system better do? Is start allowing us to help them integrate people back into society. It can be detrimental because everybody doesn't have, you know, the good qualities or the right mindset to help somebody. But if we want to stop recidivism, it's going to take people that's been where they've been to help them come back into society.
Anybody else? It's 4 o'clock. You guys want to leave? Okay. Well, I just want to take a minute and thank the gentleman for being here today.